So I'd like to call this December 6th, 2022 meeting, school committee meeting open it up and call to order. May I take a roll call vote, please? We'll start with Michelle. Oh, okay. Anyone?
Michelle,
Let's go Reilly here.
Leo Brehm here.
Michelle Kirkby here.
And Anime O'Shea Brooke here. All righty, folks. Well, it was a bummer that our last meeting had to be cut short before we completely deliberated and voted on the final two candidates for our school committee appointments to the SBC. However, I thought it was actually a blessing in disguise because it gave me some moments to just really digest all the candidates and really to consider, the entire SBC. I think we're in a privileged position that all the other members have been selected, so we can have a fuller view of what that committee is looking like. So I thought today, if we could please really give much like we did in the first meeting in terms of when we selected our candidates. Oh, we have another school committee member there. Hi.
Hi, Reese.
How we selected our members or selected the candidates when we finally came down to our final four of Patrick Duffy, Lauren Platko, Meredith Chamberlain, and Robert Worth. Each of us kind of picked our 2 or 3 or 4, gave our reasons why, and then also how we worked out finalizing the questions. We kind of gave our top 2 or top 3 or so and said our reasons why, and then we made our decisions that way. So I thought today we can also do the same. And if you want to put forward your top 2 and explain why, and then after everyone has a chance to do that, then we can talk a little bit more and maybe plead a case or not. And hopefully it'll be clear to us by the end of this. Does that sound fair?
Yep.
Everybody understand? All right. Who would like to go first? Don't all speak at once. How about I'll just pick. Tim Knight.
Yeah, no, I'm glad to. So yeah, I'll try to be fairly brief. So my top 2, I thought it was interesting because I went back and forth, thinking it over the weekend, and I guess the analogy I would share is, there's 12 candidates that are going to be coming together over the next month or 2, for this highly complex project, and they all have to come together. I've used the expression sometimes we have to first figure out who's in the bus, and then second, what are the positions on the bus? What are the roles and responsibilities for the different players once those, that group is established? And I just look at it. My first responsibility is to make sure we've got the best players in the bus. It eventually was the priority for my decision. And I know as we were wrapping up in the meeting last week, there was discussion like, hey, there's a skill set that we need that's a little more, community engagement, simplifying the message, make sure, that's core to everything we do. I agree that skill set is essential for the group. I just don't think, the chair of the SBC and that group needs to figure out who's there, and how can we make sure to make that one of the key priorities. But so I guess I'd back my way in. That's kind of what came, as I thought it through, just who are the best. What I loved was the fact is the pool that we had, even not even the 4 that we interviewed, but all the others. We had an incredibly rich pool. But I eventually looked at it as Meredith, was absolutely, she was at the top of the list for me from the beginning, and she remained there. She just had the complete package really in terms of K through 12, but she was extremely process oriented. I saw consistency in how she handles different complex problems in work. And it's kind of hard to be process oriented while still being an outside the box thinker. And, you know, that was clear, even like her, how she kind of prepared for the interview with the students. I do think she can bring some of that, you know, community engagement is core, you know, such a critical piece. She's proven Medfield volunteer experience over and over and over again. And I think that that carries a lot of weight. So Meredith, you know, came in as number one, me all the way through. And Robert Worth, where in the past I was saying I don't have to, I didn't say it was had to have K through 12, would like to have, you know, but listening to him, it was the first time I know of him. It was the first time really listening to him. He's living the future state of what we're trying to build every day. And, you know, I would say, like, where I gave it some thought, I will acknowledge, like, I don't think we fell short last year on the vote because we didn't necessarily have the, you know, principals and K through 12 experience. But I do think the way Robert just described his day in and day out, I walk into the school, I leave alone. I think about certain things. I think he can bring, you know, incredible experience and leadership as a volunteer on that committee, as a, you know, which is a different perspective than what you might get with Stephen and some others. So you know, those were my top two. I do spend a couple minutes of the logic. I think it's a very, very worthwhile conversation. You know, where you may have Lauren edging out there, just because what she brings is something we need. But eventually, I just feel best about my, you know, my own choice was saying, let's put the best possible players on that bus. And you know, I think Jess, you did a great job of communicating consistently with every candidate. There's going to be more needs that we have. You know, I served on that communications subcommittee, and you know, someone like there, you know, we're going to need more players. You have a bus, but you have an equipment, you know, something else bringing people out there. I'll stop with my corny analogy because
I was enjoying it.
but so that's my thought, and I genuinely do just, you know, I know this is public, but I also, like, it was interesting because the first interview was with Patrick Duffy, and I left that day and I was like, man, he was great too. So I really do. I think everybody brought, you know, I'm thrilled with the, you know, what we're going to be bringing with our 4 candidates to that SBC. But I just, you know, the Meredith and Robert just jumped off the page at me eventually is you know, best for me anyways.
Super, thanks, Tim. Who'd like to go next? Michelle? Oh, Leo, sorry, go for it.
I'll be more brief as I was traveling, you know, so I'm going a lot of off the paper, you know, that we had. So I found Patrick Duffy, the one interview I was able to attend, to be very enlightening. Obviously, a lot to bring to the table, and I want to echo what Jess had said to everybody too. It's not just this one committee. There will be other initiatives that will require more volunteers. So hopefully, the people that submitted will consider being a part of those, because the more people involved, the better. So, so I concur with Tim's assessment. You know, on putting forward Rob and Meredith on the bus that we are driving. Sorry.
Are you sure we're driving it?
Well, I don't know. Maybe we're not.
We might be doing the back trailer,
someone is driving,
like the guy on the fire truck. If we're really going to extend this,
Yeah.
just steers the way back.
We're also on the bus, but not driving it. Cool. All right. So Leo, for you, Robert and Meredith.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Michelle or Jess?
Sure, I can go next. I second what what Tim and Leo have already said. I felt like inspired after hearing all four of the candidates speak and meet with them, and I genuinely appreciate them putting their names forward. And sorry, Reese's going to help. Genuinely appreciate them putting their names forward and taking the time to meet with us. I feel the time that I took to kind of look back at a little bit what was done last time. And I think there was definitely a communication gap, and I think Lauren could aid in that space. But I feel that the expertise that Meredith and Robert bring to the table to round out the bus, round out the team, is just incredibly invaluable. The thing that I think they would really help with, I very much appreciated Meredith taking the time to speak to students, and both of them continually advocating on behalf of the students. I think that's a voice that, that is the voice, right? That is the voice that we should be working for, and that we should be, I can help you in one sec, that we're working for, and that we're building a school. And I think looking back at the previous process, I think that school was lovely. There was lots of things that I loved about it. I think as we got closer and closer to the vote, there were educational decisions that were made, and we know what they were. We know that they were important. I think they were lost a little amongst the community. So my hope is having voices like Meredith and Robert there from the beginning will help to be able to articulate why these educational aspects are important. Education has changed a lot since I went to school, and my fellow voters, like, education has just progressed a lot. And I think having that continued advocacy for why we need these breakout spaces, why we need more space, why things are different than they were when we went to school however many years ago. Teachers don't just stand at the front of the board anymore with their chalk and everyone sits in their desks. And if a kid is bored, you don't just throw extra worksheets at them anymore. We need to be thinking about the whole student, and we need to be thinking about what we can do to create a space that allows Medfield to continue the road of academic excellence that we've been on for so many years. So my votes are for Meredith and Robert, but I thought all four candidates were, and actually what Tim said, all 16 were amazing. So
Thank you. Jess, Reilly.
Hi. So I do have to say, I really struggled because I wanted to fit Lauren Platko in. I thought that her, and actually Patrick, I was really trying to think, when we interviewed Patrick, I looked at him and said, this is somebody that a committee can really use. This is somebody who has clearly spent a lot of time learning about a lot of different things, and learning that in a way that is hands-on, that he wants to communicate, that he is a worker, and not that the rest of the candidates aren't, but he showed a willingness to dive in a way that every committee needs, right? The person who is willing to take on some of the jobs that don't necessarily have a role, but need to be done. And so I think as Michelle and I work on the SBC, I think that if anything, I come away from this process realizing that there is an SBC, but there's actually a huge community wave that needs to happen underneath it. It needs to be built on a foundation, and we're more kind of the lintel as opposed to the foundation of the building, right? So, and I also think that Lauren truly does have, although we may not see it specifically in the way that we would traditionally understand education, I do think she has an educational role. I think that she has a great deal of educational experience, and I don't remember exactly what her degree was in, but it looked, she actually struck me as somebody who was more of somebody who does instructional kind of the kind of instructional and communications part of what she does could be so helpful for so many different small portions of our community who feel like they have specific needs, right? And that sometimes we aren't able to communicate those as a whole particularly well. However, given that, I really did want to point them out because I just really appreciated their time, and I hope to appreciate their time even more as process goes on. But I do think that given our charter, we have an obligation to propose citizens who do have that really deep, in-depth understanding of education, that our community is able to see those people as representatives of themselves and not, I think that there was a lot of crowd noise around, like people just want, like the administration just wants bigger, right? Or the SBC or the school committee just wants this, just wants that. I think that I am so encouraged that we can have educators from our community who do not necessarily have who do not necessarily have a vested interest in any one plan or another, to then communicate to the rest of their community the importance of the educational portion of this school building project, right? And I do think that Meredith, with her deep community roots and overall view of social emotional as well as educational, kind of the purview of that, and Robert, who again is the guy who leaves the building alone at night, and understands the nuances of things we can't necessarily talk about for very good reasons when it comes to building design, security, and the things we do to keep our children safe all the time, right? Those are not things we necessarily want to put out to tell everybody in the world. You don't tell people about your alarm system, but he's going to know those nuances in a different way, I think, than many, many people will be able to understand in the rest of the committee. So with that, I give a strong endorsement to Patrick and Lauren to continue to work with the SBC and to continue to work with the community. I think that they will be so valuable. But my vote for our representatives to the SBC would be Meredith and Robert. So that's my piece.
All right, fantastic. Well, I'm half on board with you folks. And, again, as I said at the beginning, I thought our meeting the last time being cut short was a little blessing in disguise to allow us and me time to really macerate with, all the information, the interviews. I'm really grateful that we went through an interview process. I'm grateful to all 16 folks who submitted applications through with the form and online on time, and they were all valuable folks in our community that are offering their time. But when I look at the entire committee, and I think I'm coming at this in a different way, and, I think of Chief Meany, he plays a role way beyond the over 65. The chief knows this town in and out. And
we don't mean that about age, by the way, Chief.
Exactly. I see, Carolyn Casey, what she brings, and Mather from the Warrant Committee, Bill Werner, both Michelle Kirkby, Jess Reilly, Teresa James, Mike Weber, Robert Donahoe, Anthony Papatonis, and then our two others. So I look at I'm looking at this in totality. And had we voted, and we have 4 awesome candidates, so really, however we fall today, and it seems pretty clear right now, but however we fall, these are awesome candidates and I would be more than happy and proud that they would serve on the SBC. So I definitely want to say that. I too am, Meredith comes to the top for me. And as Michelle Kirkby mentioned at the last meeting, I really loved how she's got a current 5th grader. She asked, a bunch of kids, it's a school for them. Let's listen to them. My favorite moment during the last SBC process was one of our visioning sessions, and was it Melissa Roeder? She brought her daughter, and her daughter had some awesome ideas that she shared. I was like, we need to bring in more kids, and so I really appreciated that element that Meredith brought to it. And the other things that I really like about her are, as Tim points out, she's proven herself in the volunteer world and commitment to Medfield, various organizations, committees, etc. And so I think having connections with groups is very important, and knowing how different sectors work within town is important. And I also really appreciate her background. She's a guidance counselor, dealing with people, dealing with different kinds of emotions, and we all know how important that's going to be in the SBC and the work ahead, and bringing folks together and building consensus. So for me, Meredith was really at the top of my list. Now, my second person, I was, I think, and I really, really like Robert, folks. So if it's him in the end, which I kind of think it's going to be, I still need to plug for Lauren. And that is what I appreciate about Lauren, and what I think Lauren can bring to the greater SBC is her new resident fresh look with little kids perspective, along with her communication background. I loved how in the interview she really talked about, not everybody is a numbers person, how do you make all these sometimes complicated or really niche elements, how do you give that to the community in digestible, understandable, clear ways. And I realize and am grateful that Jess as well, mentioned folks can be part of this process. This is not the be all end all. However, I think it's hard being on a subcommittee and not in the day-to-day, and kind of trying to piece out, if you're not part of the committee, wait, what just happened? I got to watch that again. I've got to get more information. That if you are a committee member and in attendance of all the meetings and understanding the nuances, I think it's easier to have a communications person push out that information. So that is why I would choose Lauren over Robert and Patrick. I know it's killing me to even say that, but so that is why I would choose Lauren of the other three. And we don't have, if you look at the committee on the whole, we don't have any new people blood, so to speak. We don't have any, and I think that's important. I'll never forget, being at not this past Medfield day, but the day before, the year before, and we had the 2 booths. It was just kind of, it wasn't positive energy, but the folks who did come by the SBC, new folks, what's going on? I don't really understand. How do we get our information? How do we find out? I thought we missed that, and anyways, so that's my piece, folks. And I'm wondering if you guys have anything to say in response.
I do. So I thought long and hard about, I actually come from it a slightly different way. I thought long and hard about the kind of, I toggled between Meredith and Robert and Lauren. And again, if we had voted on Thursday, I think I probably would have advocated pretty strongly for Robert and Lauren. First of all, Robert's been in town for about 2 years now, maybe 3. So he has the very, very little kids. Mather has fairly young kids and has not been here forever. Is that correct? Or maybe it's just me who remembers this. So I do think that there's an energy there. Michelle hasn't been here forever in a day either. I mean, if anything, yeah, I do think that there is a range. On the other hand, one of the things I worry about the most is that we will be in the very same position that we were in previously, that if the iteration of the SBC that we have now sees an opportunity to not responsibly hire a community communications person, then that ends up getting pushed again to Lauren. And while I think that a subcommittee is a great thing, it should not be the leading portion. And she would end up being kind of the servant of 2 masters in a lot of ways. So I think, in a position in which it seems to me that it is somewhat more important to be emphatic about our communication needs and support those, but not necessarily bring somebody in and say, but you're the easy default, right? So, so that is how I kind of wrapped my head around for me, the difference between what would be our greatest advantage here. The other thing is that Meredith has children and connections that she can reach, people I felt like maybe weren't as involved last time. There was this, I think to some extent, high school parent contingent that were like this, that I'm in between the wars on this one, right? Like, I don't have a strong sense about I'm going to lose my house or have to leave town because I feel my taxes are going up, but I also don't have as much skin in the game around having younger children. And I think that there is a real need to be able to reach that kind of kind of older than elementary, but younger than the kind of graduated and grown and flown crowd. And I think Meredith could bridge that, particularly through her kind of social and athletic connections in a way that I don't necessarily know that I can at this point, So, so that was kind of where I landed on that. So just to let you know, my deliberation, I think your thoughts about Lauren are extremely valid. And it was a struggle for me. Anyone else?
Yeah. Anyone else? Because I mean, it's clear, and Robert is, if on paper and in the interview, yeah, he is. He's a teacher. He even worked through an MSBA process, a renovation process. So he is a great individual. It would be a great asset. I suppose in the end, I felt that we had Steve, I know Robert would bring a different perspective, but I also felt like that was covered. But the committee has spoken, and we have narrowed it down pretty clearly to both Meredith and Robert. And I am comfortable to move forward and to vote them in as our school committee appointments to the new SBC. And I am hoping to have a motion unless somebody else wants to say anything else. So do we have oh, Tim, I can't hear you.
Yeah, no, the only thing, sometimes after a motion, the meeting ends and we move on. You know, I just think, I think, you know, Anna Mae, what you described, what Jess just described, it's exactly what my opening remarks were. So I just think, you know, I like the idea of moving forward with a motion. I just think there is a comment as we, you know, bring those candidates to the SBC. We think it's important that, you know, that 12 has they're going to be sitting in a room and have to figure out, hey, how are we going to do this? And, you know, establishing a role, somebody on the team who are, you know, eating, thinking, drinking, sleeping, thinking about, you know, community engagement and how do we get 66%. Is just something we would recommend. It's not saying, you know, hey, that I think I don't want to revisit. I want to bring the best forward. But I just think it is that to me is an important outcome of the interview process. That like, when we entered, I didn't say, hey, we are looking for one candidate to play this role. And if I entered thinking like that, I may, you know, that may have impacted the 4 I chose. That's the part where I struggled. But I think, you know, in a couple of weeks, there's 12 people are going to, you know, start. And that's, I think, really, it is important where, you know, they all begin to figure out, hey, what's the mission? What are our priorities? What is it, you know, what is it we're thinking about over and over again? So I think, you know, we've all spent this conversation, like we think there's a need there, and just, you know, making sure that point is clear is that, you know, hey, as you guys go there, that, you know, somebody has to be thinking like that. But that those 12 people, and, you know, Jess and Michelle, you are 2 of them, right? So, you know, on that side, if there's a, you know, I mean, you know, if they were reconsidering, then it, you know, that's fine. There's enough votes, but I just do think that is a worthwhile, you know, that's something that all of us on this, you know, school committee recognize. And Anna Mae, I saw it, you know, like I was on the communications subcommittee with you. I wasn't in all the meetings, you know, and I definitely, I understand what you mean with that. That becomes an important role, which the group is going to have to figure out, how do we, you know, how are we going to communicate from the beginning? And they all have to, you know, the 12 of them will figure that out.
Yeah, I take Jess's comments to heart, you know, it falling on us, the unprofessional communication as communication specialists. I thought, oh man, that was rough. And when we didn't have enough money to hire real professionals who do this and do it naturally, and, you know, that was rough. So I hear what you're saying, Jess, you know, and so often it happens that way, you know, just stick a Band-Aid on it. We got to volunteer to do it. And but I do think with this new committee, I'm very hopeful. You know, these are talented, committed volunteers who really want to make a difference in this town for our kids, our community. And I think the breadth and the scope of these members, including Michelle and Jess, are really gonna make a difference. So I am hopeful. So, and I would like for us to vote in Meredith Chamberlain and Robert Worth as our school committee appointees. Do I have a motion? Anyone?
Tim, you gotta, since I'm on mute, so moved. Want a second, Tim?
So moved. All right. Thank you. So moved by Jess. Do we have a second?
I second Tim.
Second, Tim Knight. All in favor? Oh, we have to take a roll call vote. Michelle Kirkby.
Michelle Kirkby, yes, vote.
Okay. Leo Brehm.
Leo Brehm, yes.
Jess Reilly.
Jess Reilly, yes.
Tim Knight.
Good night, yes.
Okay, and Anime O'Shea Brooke, yes. Yay. All right, folks. So I will go ahead and email all 4 folks who were the finalists and congratulate the 2 that we've selected and encourage the other 2 to please, 1, thank them, and 2, ask them to please stay engaged, and there may be roles for them on subcommittees or what have you. And I will also let the Board of Selectmen and Scott McDermott know. Today was our deadline to let them know, so I'm glad we got that done. I'm also, again, I want to state how grateful I am that we took the time to do the interviews and take deeper dives. So I want to thank all of you folks for your time. And it wasn't a perfect process, but I do believe that we tried our very best to make this as transparent as possible. And with, you know, Jess, you were really emphatic about having all these recorded. And I was going by Longmeadow and they did their interviews, you know, they were open meetings, but they weren't recorded. So Jess, thank you for really kind of pushing us to do that, because I think that was important. So I am grateful to each of you that make this school committee. So thanks, folks. And so we have a meeting on December 8th, Thursday night, and I'll see you guys then. Oh, we have to motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Thanks, Leah. Second, Jess Reilly.
No, it was
Let's
Michelle.
take a roll call vote again.
It was Michelle.
Oh,
who was second.
sorry.
It's okay.
Okay, second, Michelle Kirkby, and I know Jess is taking notes. Thank you, Jess. So roll call vote, Leo Brehm,
Aye, Leo Brehm.
Michelle Kirkby,
Aye, Michelle Kirkby.
Jess Reilly,
Jessica Reilly, aye.
Tim Knight,
Good night, aye.
Anime O'Shea Brooke. Aye. All righty, folks. I'll see you on Thursday. Thank you very much for all your time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Ciao.